The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings. 2022 US Open DraftKings picks and preview. If you are unfamiliar with what's going on, reminder, smash the like button for the episode. Give me your favorite $6,000 play down in the comment section. Sub to Mayo Media Network. And, of course, $90,000 of rake-free, guaranteed money available on DraftKings this week in the Pat Mayo Experience Listeners League. It is now open. It's already 15% full, and it's still pretty early in the week, so this thing is going to fill very quickly. Link is down in the description of the video and the podcast. 3 max entry, $15 to play. Go join that right now. Play in the best tournament on DraftKings. Plus, I'm staking someone in the giant $200 single entry, in the $100 Millionaire Maker. Now, I'm just going to send you the money. You can use the money on whatever you want, but the biggest thing that you can do, there's a point system. I described it on the research show, but leave a rating and review and subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Even if you've left a 5-star review already, do it again, include your Twitter handle or email address, and make up something nice about the show, even if you don't like it, because you want that money. You know what I'm not doing? Giving away money to 1-star reviews. That ain't happening. You got to be in the draw. You get the most points. 5 ballots in the draw by leaving the rating and review. If you share this on social media, those are points. You sub to the newsletter. That's free down in the description. You get points for that as well. And that's what we're doing. So please help us out for the US Open. Tyler Tamboline is in studio with me from runpuresports.com. We will be once again live on Wednesday, noon Eastern time, to finalize all of our picks. And when we're further on down into the week, this is more of a first look where our initial thoughts are going to be, how the builds are going to go. Anything stick out to you immediately here?
Yeah, I think it's actually one of the first majors. We've done this show. It's our third one now for the season. Obviously, it's the third major that lines up, but just where the chalk feels so precise already. Like, we know where people are definitely going to go. So we'll talk about it throughout the show when we get down to a one Sung Jae Im, for example, at 7,600. But I don't remember that feeling in the last couple major shows that we did, at least.
Ben Rasa from Awesemo.com is on the line as well. What were your first thoughts when you saw this pricing? Because it was released when Tambo and I were doing the live show on Wednesday for the Canadian Open, and we kind of identified right away. It's like, oh, here are the 4 guys everyone's going to own.
I'm with you guys. It really did have a different vibe of, I think we're going to have to try to figure out, are there pivots to make, or are there chalk situations that we want to buy into? And then I'll just add for me, and maybe you guys, I'm hoping you've got some answers. When I look sub 7K, it was pretty dicey. And I know at the Masters, it's kind of a different format, and certainly at the PGA, there were some guys. I didn't see a ton of names that I was super eager to click on when we got to the cheapies.
Well, if you watch the research show, Ben, which I know you didn't, you would find Ari is down there at $6,400 trying to win the American National Open.
Okay, well, we got one now. So if you give me a couple more creative players, we'll go stars and scrubs and we'll call it a day.
Well, let's talk about that. I think that the natural inclination this week is going to be building a balanced lineup. Even when I went through the research show, I identified, I think it was 11 or 12 players, all basically from Xander down to Davis Riley, I think is where I went. So how much is Xander? He is 9,600. Davis Riley is 7,300. So I took 12 guys in between there, built 25 lineups. They all look really good on paper. And I think that's going to be the common build this week. Not to say that no one's going to have Rory or Scheffler or Justin Thomas, but I do think that when people start looking at this safely, and this is going to be probably the lowest 6 of 6 percentage of any tournament this year. It's top 60 in ties make the cut. There's 156 players in the field, and it's very competitive. And we do see at the US Open, like at the Masters, one old guy makes the cut or whatever. There's going to be like random people you've never heard of who play the weekend this week.
Oh, definitely. I think you're right. And I think that's interesting because this definitely is the tournament where the balanced lineup can win out. I think we go back to the year Gary Woodland won and Brooks was chasing him with such a high price. Brooks almost ended up winning there, and people were doing the math back then. I do recall where it was saying, like, even if Brooks had got there, he might not have made his way to the optimal because of how much scoring a guy like Woodland and others around had already done. So there's that. And then you brought in, Pat, the 6 of 6 percentage, always lower with the 60 in ties. And then at the end of the day, we've seen it. You and I were talking pre-show. I think it was the year Bryson won at 7%. If you get a lower owned guy like that goes out and wins this thing, there's actually spots where, like, even in the big $100 that year, I think it was third place was a 5 of 6. Like Mega Millions have been one of the bigger tournaments, the higher stakes stuff with 5 of 6. At this type of tournament, the placement points are just so important, and that's why the balance build becomes favored.
Are you looking at that too, Ben? That placement points above all this week?
Yeah, I mean, just when you back out the percentage of points that come from streaks and bonuses at the US Open, it jumps off the page. It's just not something, it's not to say it can happen for a couple guys, but you're naturally not going to have 4 or 5 guys on Sunday that you're hoping get the under 70 bonus. And at some tournaments, that's a major factor. At this, the placement points are so important. If you're down 36 holes with a single guy on the weekend, you may not lose that much ground if you're chasing a 6 of 6.
You're hoping that at the very top that would be the case, that all your guys perform well enough. But what do you think that not necessarily the winning score, because the winning score for the past few U.S. Opens, Brooks won one at -16, tying Rory's U.S. Open record. Probably not going to see that this week. But like -4, -5, does that sound about right?
Yeah, I think that's possible. It's like you said, it definitely feels like it's going to play a lot tougher. So it could be that and not many catch up to that. And it could be maybe a few guys are hovering around there. I think you had mentioned it earlier about the playoff scenario, right? I know it's crazy old school history, but at the end of the day, playoff definitely seems viable here at least. Yeah,
and if people don't know, this has been played now. This will be the 4th time that the Country Club in Brookline has hosted the U.S. Open. Previously, Curtis Strange won in 1988, 1963. You had some dude beating Arnold Palmer and someone else, I forget, Boros, I think his name was. He ended up winning. Then before that, it was in 1913. All 3 of those years, Ben, it went to the 18-hole playoff. Now, the 18-hole playoff is gone from the U.S. Open. It's a 2-hole aggregate now, then into sudden death. But what I think that people always forget on DraftKings is that playoffs only lose you points, generally speaking, when you're trying to chase things in tournaments.
That's true. The goal is hopefully that you have everyone boxed out at that point. But no, I think it's very possible. We're going to talk on this show about building to different builds. I'm with you guys. I think we could see, 5, 6 under type thing. I also think there are scenarios there where it plays significantly easier or significantly harder. And if you build specific lineups like that, you can be very effective.
Tambo and I will be back with the weather on Wednesday. That's the most important thing. But just checking it already, like windy, maybe some rain. Yeah, this can play. And that rough, I saw Guido, he took like the first, we always get the annual US Open rough Instagram post, and it looks horrible. Like, the rough in Canada this week is bad enough. It's like double that. You can't see the ball when it's in the rough.
Yeah, I agree with you. I saw it today. We always get that video every year. We were talking over in the Discord today, just saying, like, you get that video and then people move away from certain situations.
From good plays.
Right. It's definitely one of the things that you want to look at as you're going through it. But at the same time, it's also different up on these green complexes, right? The runoffs, the bunkers around them, everything like that. So if you're in that rough early and have to click it out, there'll be a lot of longer irons than what you may see just looking at like the topography or going through a hole by hole layout where you end up having that situation. And it looks like around the green and bunker play is going to be a must, which always is at the US Opens, obviously being said, but in the end of the day, when you go through this course, it looks specifically like even more so. Yeah,
Ben, the green complexes are 4,300 square feet. So that started to remind me, like, hey, that's slightly bigger than what Pebble Beaches are. Normally, you're going to see, even at Winged Foot, when Bryson won, or when you had Brooks winning the PGA Championship at Bethpage, like, those were bigger greens. They were like 5,000 to 7,000 square feet. Like, these are almost half the size, some of them, that when you start dealing with smaller greens, knowing that the green and regulation percentage is going to be way down, how much does that overweight you to guys that are just exceptionally good around the greens? Or, because players don't normally see this thick of rough in these kind of bunker complexes, is that irrelevant? I really don't know where I land. I would lean towards it means the world, but I could be wrong.
I think it is a pretty healthy debate on things like that where, on part of me says, like, yes, no matter how good you are on your approach, you're going to have to scramble. You're going to get into some trouble. Then on the flip side, you could say, well, maybe that skill set is even more important because, the less they have to do it, the better. I don't really have a strong take. I do think that Bryson in particular showed that you can still be aggressive here. And if everyone's going to be in the rough to some extent, maybe those shorter irons can be to your benefit. So there's a lot of schools of thought. Off the tee is going to play a serious role. That much I feel very confident in, though.
I agree, but the one basic thing that I was told by people who have caddied at this course is that unlike Winged Foot, where you have these elevated greens and you have the bunker complexes surrounding them, especially at the front, you're not going to be able to do even like the, hey, I'm Bryson, I'm going to hit it 360 into the rough, I'm going to hit a pitching wedge in and bump and run it up. Bump and run is not going to exist at this course for the most part. You're going to need to have some sort of height on your ball that it's going to be extra penal being in the rough here versus what Bryson did at Wingfoot, where let's just bomb and gouge, run it up, try to two-putt our way out of this, maybe get lucky on some par fives, and boom, that's good enough to lap the field. I don't think that strategy is going to be correct this week. And maybe, listen, I'm wrong about a ton, so I just don't see that happening here.
Yeah, that's going to be a factor again. Just the elements of how you piece it together, from these good drivers to these good scramblers to the iron players. Of course, it's going to be an all-around test, and that's really the challenge that we have in front of us.
When I was going through the research show, that I really weighted adjusted total driving, which is just I created a model that's driving distance 60%, driving accuracy 40%, and see who rated out best in that. I do think that is the most important thing this week.
Yeah, it's definitely the number one, like you mentioned, but just going back for 2 seconds, that short game factor, you mentioned just some of the stuff, but also not just the elevation. There's blind shots out there where there's trees off the sides of the greens. The greens are built USGA style standard, but to push down into that stuff, like I just don't see how it's not going to be a big factor. And then you talked about, we'll get there Wednesday with weather, but if we have those winds on top of it, we have those longer iron shots that make it even tougher. I think the short game, to me, there's no way that gets ruled out, where most people at a US Open, again, it's early for first look, looking at distance, of course, and then also at being in the fairway. Of course, you got to be in the fairway. People are going to miss fairways. So my point is, I think the short game is bigger than most probably think, and would actually weigh that more than the other stuff, just to be a little bit unique going into the week with a good case for it, I think.
Yeah, I think even if you just wanted to build the most rudimentary thing, and you can use Fantasy National, fantasynational.com/Mayo will get you 20% off any of the memberships if you go sign up right now. And you can construct your own model if you'd like, that strokes gained off the tee, total driving mix that we talked about, plus around the green. Just include those three things and see what happens.
Yeah.
I think, you'll want to have the good iron players, because the one thing I was told is that if you're like, let's say you hit it 10 yards into the rough, 360 away, your next shot is probably going to be hacking it back onto the fairway. It's not going to be, let's go with the hole here. So guys from like 125, 175, no matter where they are, you're still going to need to recover a lot of shots. Like scrambling is one thing, but it's really hard to judge scrambling at a normal course, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of guys are going to miss the green. They're going to have to scramble to get themselves up and down. Here, the scrambling might come from 200 yards away.
Yeah, you're starting from scratch. You screwed up off the tee, so then it's this. So to Ben's point, like obviously it's important, huge, but I'm saying just to look at it from one other angle, I don't see any way where this around the green game stuff and sand saves aren't important.
And generally, Ben, this is where people would say, oh, it's going to be a little bit windy. And we don't know that for sure. There's no confirmation that that's going to happen. That's just what it looks like in the early forecast, that, Euro players know how to play in the wind. However, at most European courses, you can play that, hey, let's land it 20 yards short of the green and run it up onto the green. If that's not possible this week, I think we can throw that narrative out.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, what you see generally with those link style courses, they're wide open. You can do some things that you're not going to be able to do here. So again, that's the challenge. I do think that like the videos that we're going to see on Twitter all week always lend itself to that. And I do want to see some of these things where how punishing is it? Like, yes, if there's fescue, but it's 100 yards off the fairway, like, well, that doesn't really matter to me, but we'll see. Obviously, this is going to be a tough test of golf. I think that's a given, but where do we really need to hone in, and how important is that around the green? I think that's one of the biggest questions, maybe the biggest question this week.
I do think that like I mentioned, I think that the driving is the most essential component that you're going to need to see this week. When you go back and look at the past US Open champions, that just kind of translate. Rahm, Bryson, Woodland, Brooks, Dustin. Then you have Spieth, when he was a good driver of the ball, which he is now again, by the way, that you're just, those are top tier players. Gary Woodland notwithstanding, he was a good player. He's not as good as he was in 2019 when he won at Pebble, when he was still trending upwards, but very good off the tee. That the US Open just generates these types of players at the very top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, you're going to have that. It's no secret. Like I said, it is still a pretty standard setup. I just thought that was an interesting piece to point out. When we get to it, you're still going to have to make those decisions, because if you're looking at it from that angle, just think about the top range. You can make the case for a lot of guys, right? It's going to be, though, in the end, if Scheffler, Rory, and Rahm, for example, are all putting it into the fairway and good off the tee games, then you got what's going to happen around the green game. Do we get Rahm, who's been horrible around the green lately, or do we get him showing back up with what he used to be like around the greens? And obviously Scheffler can't miss right now. We'll see how he finishes in Canada, but just Rory, see how he finishes in Canada. We got a lot of stuff going on right now that goes sort of with the top range that we're going to be talking about.
Well, I mean, this isn't going to show up in the stat. I mean, maybe it will show up in the stats, but just from casual observation of watching the Canadian Open from St. George's, Ben, that the rough is really up. It was really wet. It's been incredibly difficult to hit out of throughout the course of that tournament. And Rory found himself in the rough, I think, 85% of the time in round one. Wasn't too much better. He was significantly better in round two in terms of hitting fairways. But his ability to get the ball out of that rough, Scheffler was very much on that same page. Their ability to get it out of there and still have manageable shots up and around the green, I thought was really impressive, where you had someone like Cam Smith, who he played much better in the Friday round because he was hitting more fairways. When he was off the fairway in that thick rough, he had no game to speak of.
Yeah, I mean, he also just eagles from the middle of the fairway for no reason. But other than that, it is true. And Rory's someone that, the way he drives the ball, he's very accustomed to having iron shots that are inside 100 yards frequently. And I don't think that's the highlight of his game, but I do think, as you mentioned, there's going to be weird things where you have 80 yards for birdie here after you chip out after a bad drive. And I think being able to mask that and give yourself 8 feet for par, 10 feet for par is going to be a skill set that's really important this week.
I just sorted by the average per round strokes gained around the green gained, turning the Fantasy National filter to rough length that is measured as long. Now, it's not just because it's long doesn't mean it's going to be USGA long. This is going to be the worst they see all year. But like Memorial last week had very thick rough. St. George's at the Canadian Open has very thick rough. This is going to be worse, but to give us sort of a standardization of guys that have more than 15 rounds played over their past 24, Fleetwood is the best player in the field. Canadian Ben Silverman is right after that. Horschel, Fitzpatrick, Gooch, Kisner, Cam Young, Berger, Sungjae, Stewart, Paul Shaughnessy's buddy, Andrew Novak. Then you have Justin Thomas, Troy Merritt, Kim, Lucas Herbert, Sam Horsfield, Rory, Cam Smith, Seamus Power, Munoz, Harold Varner, Patrick Reed, Kevin Na. Those are the types of players. And if we flip it completely around and find the worst players that you might know, Big Dick Vic Perez is down there. Big Dick Vic Hovland is down there as well. Sean Norris, Callum Tarrant, Brooks Koepka, Adam Scott, Abe Answer, EVR, Kurt Kitayama, Guido, John Rahm, Justin Rose, Phil Mickelson, Ryan Fox. So not necessarily the names. Some of those names you don't want to see at the bottom of that list. And listen, it's a 1-week sample. You chip one of them in, all of a sudden you're great around the greens in terms of the numbers. So there's a lot of give and take that goes along with this. But I thought that was a really interesting way to start off based on what you were thinking about where we should be targeting this week.
Yeah, no, I like it for sure. Like you said, interesting to see Rahm down there, but again, it goes off of what Rahm you think shows up. Anything can change for 1 week sample size. I think Vic Hovland, who you talked about in there as well, he feels like lately where some people want to just talk themselves into him every time, and he was okay. We talked about it at the PGA Championship. It wasn't that, was not the problem. He came through with that. He was putting it to 5 feet, 6 feet off the side of the greens and then just missing the putt. That was the problem. He didn't have a great week overall, but if you look at him at 9,700 here, he's another guy you could think about, but don't like to see him down there. Don't like him and Kawa as much with what I saw and sort of seeing out there today.
It is, and it's really interesting to think about because these are going to be harder to hit fairways than something like Bay Hill, for example, Ben, where Hovland played really well. He lost by a shot to Scheffler. That was thick rough. Those were hard to hit fairways by and large, and it was just a lot of hitting it out of the rough. So you can go one way that Hovland does have the type of power in the type of game, very Rory-esque, that he's going to be at an advantage because he's such a good driver of the ball, and even if he is in the rough, he has the power to move it far more forward than everyone else. Then you have to look back and think, well, the guy is the worst around the green player on earth, that might end up inevitably holding him back. Where at Southern Hills, there really was no rough around the greens. It was shaved edges. That's why we kind of liked him, that, hey, maybe this will actually work in his favor. And it wasn't a detriment, put it that way. He gained strokes around the green. He lost strokes putting, which is sort of the inverse is what he was doing all year. But I think this thick rough might just get the best of him, won't it?
So the thing about Hovland with his around the green game, that's been the one part that is it kind of is carrying over, not in a good way. He's been consistently awful there. Everything else is all over the map, and that's why I'm a little confused. He's been putting in the last couple weeks for a change. The ball striking hasn't been as crisp, but I just worry. It seems like no matter what scenario we get, your around the green game is going to be tested. It may not be the end all be all, but he's almost non-competitive in terms of around the green. It truly is amongst the worst on tour, not just of the elite players. That's a big problem.
Last thing before we jump into the pricing and make some picks here and try to develop a strategy, what do we do with the LIV guys?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. I won't really consider like anything they've done this week. I know it ends today. It's a Saturday. That's how it ends out. But
no, but I agree with you that taking in their like recent form of what they did on the LIV Tour is one thing, because we're not even going to have stats from that. Who knows? I mean, it looked like a really difficult course over in London. Yeah. So maybe, hey, just because someone shot +2 doesn't necessarily mean they had a bad week. But there's going to be, I mean, Phil is the first press conference on Monday when it comes up. These guys are going to be under huge scrutiny. And frankly, they haven't been getting in the same reps as everyone else.
Maybe, yeah. Again, we don't know necessarily what they've been doing on the side or practicing-wise. They're obviously getting practicing with their bank account and checking what they got in there. I know that much. But at the same time, when you look at the numbers and stuff, I'm going to still take it into consideration. It's like the injury stuff we talk about, the skip the pro-am stuff we talk about, all those things. We don't know enough information to truly go off of it. I think, if anything, we're just going to get them at lower owned positions. Like, there's certain spots, like Sungjae is there, Louis is the same price. It's Louis in a major, and now that might be the only things these guys really get to play outside of LIV. So I don't know. I still think they're interesting. DJ, for example, doesn't show up, and I've got so many options around him that I don't care that he's coming in at 5%. It's US Open. I bet him at 40 because I thought the number was insane. Needing to play him here.
Is it that insane though? When was the last time DJ was good?
Yeah, that's true. Exactly. But it feels big, and that's probably how they got me. You see the boost, it's 40, it looks good. It happens with a lot of guys, but I just think I'd rather that anyway, because if he shows up and he's in the mix, he's a guy that can go out and close and win. If he's not, then it's fine. But when you look at it from a DFS perspective, we have like 4 or 5 other guys around him that you can play no problem.
Ben, the only thing I can guarantee is that these guys are not going to be very highly owned.
Yeah, that's a good thing. I always like embrace people are angry at these people. They didn't see them this week. If they weren't paying attention. I think that's all good things for the ownership. It's definitely a case-by-case basis. I'm right in line with Tambo. Like, the opportunity cost on DJ is immense, but when you talk about guys like Usti, like Sergio, even Taylor Gooch to a lesser extent, I mean, if anything, I think it's a positive that they're over there running amok rather than just being in the Canadian Open. So I'll probably look to play those guys if everyone else isn't.
When we first started doing shows together, which I think is 6 years ago now, Ben, which is insane to think, that we used to have, and Grayson Murray was good. He actually won a tournament that year. That we had the Grayson Murray corollary for DraftKings, that everyone hates Grayson Murray. So no one's going to use Grayson Murray. Thus, it actually made him a pretty decent play. I think you're going to see that materialize for Patrick Reed, for Bryson. I'd say Ricky, but obviously he can't qualify for the US Open because he's not any good. Maybe he can get back in at another point. Who knows? That you're going to see this down the list for all of these guys. Not only were Bryson and Reed hated to begin with, but now they're even more hated. That I don't know if you want to take that plunge. It's funny. Of all those LIV guys, that Louis is probably your best bet in terms of where he comes in pricing, who he's around, and the ownership you're going to get. Sergio's probably second. I would probably say, Ben, that Reed is probably third.
Yeah, I mean, Reed, he of course he didn't play this week over there, but he qualifies now as a LIV guy. There is something to that. I've always believed that, and people, especially in majors, when you get a little more casual audience, when there's so many guys to choose from, you're talking about 1v1s like Reed to, you know, the guys he's next to are really popular names that people really like most of the time. So I think if nothing else, it does depress the ownership, and we've seen time and time again, hate these guys or not, they can show up and they can win big time events.
Let's jump into the pricing, and we'll start at the very top and go all the way down to $9,000, because this goes back to, can you play a Stars and Scrubs, or do you want to play a balanced build? I do think that the prevailing notion this week is going to be that balanced build, whether you're starting with Xander, which is very likely for a lot of people, Spieth, Zalatoris, Cantlay in that range in the 9,000s. But then you have all these guys up top. Scheffler, Thomas, Rahm, Rory, Cam Smith, and Morikawa. And I'll even throw Victor Hovland here because he's above Xander at $9,700. So $9,700 and above. I do think that Scheffler is going to be massively owned. I think you'll see Rory and Rahm be pretty highly owned. Thomas and Smith probably somewhere in the middle. And then you're going to have Morikawa and Hovland, who legit people are not going to use this week. When I went through the research, Morikawa, at least what he does, not necessarily peak upside, but let's say 80% Morikawa. As long as he doesn't chip like he does at the Memorial, he should be pretty good here because what he does fits US Open style golf. And we kind of backtracked a little bit on him last year at Torrey Pines because he doesn't mash it. He is slightly below average in terms of overall distance, but he is one of the more accurate players with his driver in this field. And that gave him a big advantage at Torrey Pines. He was very much into the mix going on to the back nine. That was at a course that was 7,650 yards. This one is almost 400 yards shorter. That if he shows up and does his thing, now it did not work at low ownership at the PGA Championship. However, it did work at low ownership at the Masters when you used him. If he's going to be like 5% owned, you talked about a 5% DJ, and you're not concerned about that with the opportunity cost of the guys around him, just like him more. I still think that Morikawa has elite upside in this field, and I don't want to make this seem like this is the Pat is on Morikawa. I want you guys to talk me in or out of this because I'll go with you because I've lost all objectivity on him. But playing peak Morikawa golf or even 80% Morikawa golf, I think is good US Open golf.
I like him. I sent you the text last night, the 33-1 boost. I said, like, this, I think it's the time. If it gets better, then great. But at the same time, it's a good squeeze play. I think actually the most popular guy at the top is going to be Rory. People love Rory. He's 10-5. We don't even know what he's about to do in Canada. But even before that,
he better win because I could use that money.
Yeah, that'd be nice. And you'd have your Rory double.
I have my Rory double.
Then you could get off him here. But I do like that. And then, again, Morikawa is in between Xander, below. Obviously, Hovland, those guys are there too, and Smith. But they'll pull some off. And then I think JT still gets popular. Scheffler at 11-3, it feels more like that 14 to 15%, where, yes, people play him. It's Scheffler in this tournament. He fits it. He makes sense. The models like him. All of that. But it's harder to do. Here's the other reason I'll give you for Rory that people like this when we do it on the Wednesday show. Xander and Fitz is basically Rory and a $7,600 guy. Now, they probably already have him in their lineup, but we know there's, like we talked about, Fleetwood is down there. Riley's down there, even a little cheaper. Like, you can make that 2v2 work where people just go up to Rory and down from Fitz. And you know that'll be a popular situation where people, so we'll talk about it on Wednesday. They'll both be popular, Rory and Fitz, and that you can easily switch off to the Xander starting point, but people are going balanced. So you have to kind of look a little bit further. And the other guys I like up top are Rahm and JT. So that's where I'm at. I'm sticking with Rahm. I think I personally love what Rahm does over 4 rounds. That's how I'm always going to go about it. I think that's where you can get the best Rahm at the hardest courses where the consistency matters. Look, just, what was it, the Memorial? How did he even get to T9? Horrible week. And he's still T9. It's a place he plays well at. He plays well at US Opens. I think he's a guy I can go with up here at 10-8 and look for that pivot.
Who do we like the least amongst that? Maybe that's a good starting point for us, Ben. I think I actually like Justin Thomas the least, weirdly enough, of this bunch. I think that US Open golf, well, he has good results. One of them came at Erin Hills, which was the easiest US Open on record, which I think benefits him more. I don't think that he's an easy course player by any means. He just won at Southern Hills, which was incredibly difficult. But once you start getting it into the deeper rough, he has that around the green game, which is immaculate. But unlike all of the other top price players, I mean, I would throw Morikawa into that mix and probably Cam Smith into that mix well. He doesn't have the power necessarily that the rest of these guys do for recovery shots, that his degree of difficulty is just so much higher.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, listen, he's a great player, but we're choosing against the best players in the world. And to me, Justin Thomas off the tee has some problematic things. He can get crazy out with the putter. I do think, not that he's just like an easy course specialist, but I do prefer him just tearing apart when he's dialed in, taking an easier course apart. So of the guys, if I had to eliminate, I mean, I guess I'd eliminate Cam Smith because I don't even see him when I look at the board. But Justin Thomas, I don't love the setup for. He can always get it done because he's JT, but it's hard for me to click him over Rahm, Rory, Scheffler, or the balanced build, which is all going to be preferred.
And even to go back and look, he had the 9th place finish at Erin Hills. In the past 2 years of the US Open, he's been fine. 8th at Winged Foot, 19th at Torrey Pines. How did he do it? Wasn't from driving. Wasn't even from iron play. He gained at least 3.5 strokes around the green in both those events and at least 4.7 strokes putting in both those events. Now, the around the green, he's great around the green.
Yeah.
That's still an impressive number, which probably isn't attainable outside of an outlier week. But those putting stats from Justin Thomas, he's putting better recently, but you just can't expect that to happen for him.
Maybe not, but that's why, like I said, I'm going back to whether it's contrarian or not by the end of the week or even
It
at
will
all.
be. Unless he wins in Canada, it will be.
I'm saying more the strategy of taking the short game into play. He destroys these guys up top in sand saves, bogey avoidance, around the green. That's just what he does.
Yeah,
and if people are going to be missing fairways anyway, and some will, it doesn't matter. At some point they're going to, or they have these blind second shots, or that I want one of the best iron players in the world as well. Okay, he goes in the rough. He has to click it out to 200 yards. Who do you want the chance at par on that hole still from the 200-yard shot? You want JT. That's the guy with the best irons out there, besides maybe Morikawa up in this top range. So if I'm going up here, I don't mind him at all.
I get it. I think I would try to find the $400 to get to Scheffler, Ben. I think this is just more suited for Scheffler.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's just so many options. In a perfect world, of course, you would get to all these guys in a multitude of things, and it's just not really feasible. So that's where I do think building, even at the top, building with that in mind. Like if we truly think around the green is going to separate, well, certainly JT is going to get a massive boost up, and a guy like Rahm, who I do really like, would get a bump down in that particular skill set. So those are the little things we have to consider. But when I look at it, amongst everything that we have, I still do kind of hone in on Rahm and Rory in the upper range.
Even to look back on his past 24 rounds on difficult, thick, rough, that's difficult relative to par. Let's get rid of that. And we'll click on to Fantasy National and go with long, rough. I just want to see over the past 24 rounds how Rahm rates out that way. He's still bad.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that used to be such a strength of his game. Like when we're looking at the bad around the green players, it's going to be Rahm, Morikawa, and Hovland. Those three stick out like a sore thumb right now, with Morikawa and Hovland being worse than Rahm. Rahm sort of in between, and then you have Thomas, Scheffler, Rory, and Cam Smith all being like pros at that. Like there's a reason that they're so good at that. They're great out of the sand. They're great around the green.
Yeah, it is true, but I mean, you go to Memorial, Rahm gained.
Rahm was great.
Yeah, he got it back, and he found at a course that he knows that he feels comfortable with. I think he's very comfortable in majors. The guy talks a very big game. He hasn't fully backed it up to what people want to see, but he's a top 10 machine. He already did get a major at a US Open and found his way back into that one. Poor Louis. But I'm just saying, at the end of the day, it's a guy. I'm with Ben. I want to be on side with him, and there's going to be lots of value plays down below with the LIV guys we talked about. Some of the other guys we already know. The chalk is so condensed down at the bottom. It's only Saturday, and we know this. People, it doesn't matter.
Hey, we thought that at the Players when we did this show too. We got to Monday and no one wanted to use anyone anymore.
Total different with a wave advantage that came into play at the Players. That's where things changed a little bit. Here, there's no matter what are we going to take Sungjae from today 25 to 30 down to like 15 to 20? It's just not going to happen. I don't see it. So there's little things like that where I think you can get different. I don't mind playing these guys at the top regardless of ownership.
How comfortable, Ben, are you with not using any of these guys in lineups?
Normally, I say I really don't like to do that, but in this particular, given that it could play crazy difficult and the US Open weird stuff happens, I am okay with doing that. It's not my preferred build, but I'm more open to just saying, you know what, I can beat these guys, and it really does help when you build if you don't use them. From
the Hovland up, I think Scheffler stands out as by far the best play. I just have the most confidence that he is going to play well at this tournament. Whether he wins or not, their win equity is probably all exactly the same. I think Cam Smith's is a little bit down at this type of course, same as Morikawa and same as Justin Thomas, but only marginally. No one's going to be surprised if any of these guys win the very creatively named US Open trophy, which is real tiny as opposed to the Wanamaker. You can see the PGA Championship overcompensating in the trophy department. I think Scheffler is the safest. I think he has the most upside. There's a reason he's the most expensive. I'm going to use him. After that, it's Rahm and Rory, and I have to decide, I think, between the two, because I do lean towards that balance build that we've been talking about.
I'm with you there. That's what I was just going to say. The question you asked, Ben, like I'm very comfortable just leaving these guys off. And that's why I also struggle with Scheffler, not because I don't think he's a great play. He obviously is. He's literally the best in the world. We'll see what he does this week. He could still win this week. Like he's incredible. Even with the 2v2 I gave earlier, there's ways to maneuver it to find him, right? If you go from Xander up to him and Fitzpatrick down to somebody else and that sort of play the best plays build we like, you can find a way to get there. But my point would be more, these 11K guys are hard to show up at a US Open because the bottom of the board gets so tricky. Like Ben said earlier, in the 6K range, there's like nobody. Even though it's filled, remember too, it's amateurs. It's guys that got in on Monday queues and courses that you could go low on and just have to beat the crew there. Like it's all different factors. And I'm with you, Pat. I definitely like going down some. I just think you still have to get a little bit unique with these balanced builds. Like maybe start with Spieth instead of Xander. Maybe get real aggressive and start with Willie Z instead of Xander, where people are going to go like Rory, Willie Z, and then down or something along those lines if they're even using him. So I think there's plenty of ways to get different with, and the pricing too. We talked about earlier. Pricing pricing is so bad. Like there was just mistakes made. Maybe the first time all year that I've seen it where, like I said, there's actual prices that are just look wrong. When we get to Sungjae, we'll talk about what the plan is. But the point would be you can make balanced builds work that have really good, on paper, 6-6 equity. But if you fall short and get the 5-6, you still might have the 5 guys that can really move the needle to the top.
If you use Scheffler in a lineup, Ben, you have $7,700 remaining for each of your next 5 guys. That is instinctively going to lead people to Sungjae, because Sungjae is going to be very popular this week. I think that Davis Riley is going to be very popular as well at $7,300. So now we have Scheffler, Sungjae, and Riley. I think it's going to be, for Scheffler lineups, I think that is the first 3 clicks that people make, essentially, when they make Scheffler lineups. And we know Fitzpatrick is going to be very popular. He's only 85. So we put those 4 guys into a lineup. We have $76,500 left for 2 spots. Like, that's a very doable lineup, isn't it?
I mean, it's doable. You're talking about a very prevalent build, and you're going to have 2 spots to differentiate. I get it. I'm not opposed to that per se. I think it's just a matter of how do we go about changing that, because when you click in Scheffler and Sungjae, you're funneled to specific areas. There's not that much you can maneuver, because to me, what was this guy's name? Harry Hall.
Harry Hall.
There's nobody down there besides these dudes. So there's just not that much flexibility when you do that. It's something we'll have to work around. But as Tambo said, this is the first major that I can remember this year where there's just pricing that's inaccurate. It doesn't mean the guy is going to make value, but it does mean that it's pretty clear to everyone that some of these guys are vastly underpriced.
Let's talk about the chalk guys before we get into the 9. Here's what I'm seeing right now, and see if you guys disagree, want to add or take anyone off that list. Xander starts out the chalkiest guy at the top. I think he's going to be the most owned of anyone over $9,000. Then you have Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick is going to be 20+% owned, unless he completely implodes in Canada. Even if that happens,
it doesn't matter. Yeah. Even if people, like I said with the Suns, even if people finally are coming around and talk their way down some, they're talking themselves down from the highest point. So it can only go so far.
As I mentioned to you, Ben, before we started the show, the only thing that would probably not kill it, but decrease his ownership is if he actually wins in Canada.
Yes.
So sadly, it's true. But he's not going to. I bet Fitzy to win. So you don't have to worry about that. He's not going to win in Canada. I hope he does, but he's going to be massive chalk. And then again, that creates opportunities between him and Xander of, I'm not sure I see a lot of chalk options between those two. Maybe Neiman or Lowry.
Maybe, but right now, and this is very early, I'm looking at the ownership percentages on Fantasy National. Those guys are all pretty flat. There's outliers that no one wants to use. Dustin Johnson, for example. He's going to be super low owned. Brooks is going to be super low owned. Billy Horschel is probably going to be super low owned. But other than that, everyone will be like between 8 and 13%. And if you just compile all those guys together, you have a pretty unique lineup. Because Xander, Fitzpatrick, Homa, Mito, Tommy Fleetwood, Sungjae, maybe Keegan, maybe Henley, Davis Riley. Those are the guys that everyone is going to this week.
Yeah,
I like all of them.
Yeah, of course. Everyone's going to. It's gonna happen. That's what I'm saying. But like that, for the lineup you mentioned with Scheffler, very doable. I don't think I would put more than 2, if at all, of those 4 that you mentioned in the same lineup together in any of these large field contests. Like, you're just setting yourself up to what we always talk about. Can you still make that lineup unique? Easily. Throw Harry Hall in there. Throw another guy with $400 left on the table. You're unique. It could get there. It's a way. My point is, you've got 4 guys that you're almost cornered into. It's going to come down to like a 2v2 on Sunday for all the money, and I don't want to be in that situation. I want more leverage.
Well, I just made a 2v2 swap in that lineup. So it initially had Riley and Matthew Fitzpatrick with Scheffler and Sungjae. Now it's Scheffler, Sungjae, Keegan, Daniel Berger for the same amount of money that was used.
Yeah, and you did not decrease ownership as much as you probably think.
Probably, I mean...
It definitely did. I agree with you. I'm saying, but it's not going to be as much as what you'd think.
Fitz versus Berger is probably a 10% difference.
Right. Like, to me, that's not moving the needle on that setup.
And Keegan is probably 2 to 5% less than Davis Riley. But I still have my 2 other spots as well.
Yeah, I'm saying, like, if you put like a Hatton or like a Horschel or something in there that just seems overpriced that might not be, right? Louis, if people aren't going to go to him off the LIV, or Sergio, Gooch, who keeps popping and everything, and I don't think he'll get popular by the end of the week, but it would make sense. He still looks good, and his short game and stuff is really solid on top of all the other stats that you mentioned. So I'm looking more for stuff like that if I'm playing a Scheffler lineup, even in my ROM lineups, that sort of thing. I think it's going to be too common for the other setup, and in these large field tournaments, you need, like the $15, massive this week. You need the nuts. We know this. You just can't make lineups like that. I can't anyway. Going in, I'm trying to ship the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think it's horrible.
Okay. Killing my life.
Doable. I'm sorry, Pat.
I lose every week anyway. No, this is why you're here to teach me.
We've never got pricing like this where we can go at it this much for this range. But I think to me, it's like I said, they've set it up not on their fault. It is they make the pricing, but saying it is what it is. Everyone deals with the same pricing. But that's where you have to take it, know this stuff. It, like Ben said it best earlier. It doesn't mean they're not going to make value. It doesn't mean they're going to make value, at these good prices that they're at, the softer prices. But people know what people are doing going in. We're not playing against who's the best golfer. That's what the end result is. We're playing against the rest of the field. We have to build correctly going in and then let the cards fall as they do.
So you don't think with the core of those four guys, even though I got rid of the two most popular options in that, if I wanted to use, let's say, Seamus Power and Aaron Wise.
Sure, that's better than what you went to, because you went
but as my final two guys in that lineup.
Oh yeah, it's fine. I mean, if we actually work it out, it probably works out okay. I'm saying that we were talking the starting core four, you still end up, everything's going to sound good or look good on paper. You still end up cornering yourself to at least three guys the same as everyone else. It's just so close in the upper range. Again, we've seen majors where chalk gets there too.
Yeah, but then you're competing against everyone, not a select grouping. Now, Ben, I know you look into this as well. Obviously, the strategy changes the higher up that you move in terms of entry point on DraftKings. If you're playing a $4,444 tournament with fewer people, do you feel like this means less than what Tambo was talking about playing in the $15 Millionaire Maker?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, when you're trying to beat hundreds of thousands of people, you're even when you have something that's only 3% of lineups have this. It's that's thousands of people still. But in a tournament with say 500 people, you could be only talking about a few dozen people doing this. 6 of 6 is going to be so low. There are ways to do it. So like everything, you want to fall somewhere on the middle. You can get crazy extreme and be wildly unique, and you're probably over leveraged, or you can just be complete chalk and then you have absolutely no path to victory. So finding those guys in the middle, probably the key. And there are some names in the mid nines that I think can accomplish that.
Well, let's get to them. The mid nine guys, Xander, as mentioned, is going to be incredibly popular. And I'm just looking at the stats model that I printed out. He's number one. Never finished worse than 7th at a US Open. I think he's a good play because I don't think that he's going to push. Maybe he gets to 25%, but I think that enough people will talk him out as being chalk that 21%, something like that. And I'm not going to avoid a good play just because he's 21%. I'll figure it out later. I think crazily enough, that he doesn't even need to win at this price point. You'd like him to win, obviously. But the bottom of your lineup looks so much better when he is your number one guy. Or, like you said, start with Spieth. Start with Will Zalatoris. I think they're great plays at $95 and $9,300. Then you have Cantlay, Matsuyama, and Lowry. I'm off of Cantlay. I'm not doing that. And I think a lot of people are going to be on board with that for me. He didn't even rate out well on all the stuff that we looked at. But Lowry is the play. I think if we're talking, and he's not going to be super highly, he'll be owned. He'll be in the teens. But of all these guys from 8,500 to outside of Xander, like from 8,500 to Spieth, 9,500 to 8,500, I think objectively Shane Lowry is the best play.
Yeah, and I think he's probably one of the better chalk plays too, early, at least looking at it. Here's the thing people always do, and I'm guilty of it as well. If a guy's 30%, it's US Open. There's going to be carnage and chaos. We talked about the course, everything. Get off him. Just why play any of these guys? That's more where I'm with what I said with you earlier, where even though you went to 10% less guys, I don't want that because I want the lower owned guys for the leverage, where maybe I only have 1 or 2 chalk pieces. This is a guy you make a decision on, though. Him and Sungjae were 2 I was going to talk about today on the show. At $9,000 at 20 to 25% ownership, if it happens. I don't even know if it will. My point was, though, if he's 20%, let's be fair, you can get 40%. You're allowed to. And that's not killing your lineups. That's not killing your player pool. It's your portfolio. Do what you want with it. But you are allowed to play 40% or 60% or lock in Shane Lowry if you just think he's the best play at $9,000. He fits a lot of different lineup constructions. You could start lineups with him. He can be your second guy in, your third guy in. There's lots of ways to play him. He's a decision piece. For me, I'm going to be playing him. I don't see any way to go away from it. I don't care how this week finishes. He's done more than enough, and he's been on fire. He's playing with the right game right now. He didn't get his win yet. Maybe he wins this weekend still.
And doesn't even need to win at this price.
Does not. That's what I'm saying. Can easily be your third guy in. And that's where I'm saying a unique build. Just give one out here right quick. But Spieth, Zalatoris, Lowry. You may end up on some of the same similar guys, but maybe don't play it. Or maybe you can play them because they're in all the other styles of builds we talked about. I'm just saying that's a unique style of build where Spieth or Lowry could win. Zalatoris could win. You got 3 potential winners. You end up in the same range.
Zalatoris might come second.
He's likely to cut. You know, I'm the biggest the cheerleader for that, but I don't think it's going to happen here. I just said, like, when he's at 9,300, unique way to get him in, where people think your first guy or your second guy has to be your winner. They don't. He can pull up the rear in 10th if Lowry and Spieth are above him, and then your value plays come to work as well.
Yeah, with that build, Ben, Spieth, Zalatoris, Lowry, $7,400 left for the remaining three people.
Yeah, more than doable. I'm going to advocate for Hideki. I think that he's kind of just lurking right there. Certainly, I have no problem.
He's a cheater. He got...
I like my guys that cheat. That makes it easier.
He got DQ'd from the Memorial for cheating.
Yeah, well, good. He'll probably carry, Decky. He'll have the shame factor. He'll want to make right with his family and everything. He's just a player, good scrambler. Everything checks out. Likes difficult conditions. I don't know if the neck thing seems to be popping up each and every time he takes a start. I don't know. It's just one more factor that I think we really aren't sure about, but I'm willing to embrace that. I think he's the type of guy. He shows up. Clearly, to me, Shane Lowry would be the preferred option. He checks basically every box. I'm not sure what the problem would be with him. Price is right. Game is in good shape. He's putting the lights out, which is a little scary, but I think Decky's a very interesting pivot, and I'm not sure he's going to be popular at all.
I don't think that he will be. I think he'll be more popular than the Dustins and the Brookses and Horschels, but not significantly more behind this other group of guys at the very top. Now, my guy, Skylar Hoke, who's doing some great work here in terms of math and trying to factor everything out. He's running some very different calculations for the US Open. So he actually sent this to me. I don't know if he wants me revealing it, but I'm doing it anyways, guys. Sorry about that. But I am going to give you credit. So at Skyhook DFS on Twitter, and I know that he's going to be putting out a bunch of stuff like this, he took a look at every hole that's playing over par so far in this season of play. And Shane Lowry, the difference between Shane Lowry and Scotty Scheffler, that's number 1 and 2. Lowry's the best, Scheffler is second, is the difference between Scotty Scheffler and John Rahm, who's in third. He's that much better than everyone else on hard holes. It's the easy holes that screw up Shane Lowry. The hard holes, he tends to play pretty well on. And we know we're going to get, 16 of the 18 holes being that this week?
Oh, yeah, exactly. And this is the funny part. So I said it earlier with, we're on Twitter all the time. You're going to see it of course the Shane Lowry chalk gets there. I can see it now. Yeah, it did, because he's that good. He's priced incorrectly.
He's going to be 13% owned.
Who, Shane Lowry?
Yeah.
I think he'll get to 20.
I don't think
I just think, again, we're so early in the week, and you just gave that wonderful stat. It's all going to get pushed over. Trust me.
It should, but do you think that's going to get people away from Xander Fitz as a start?
It may or may not. You can still play them all, though. You can play Xander, Lowry, Fitz. You can build that. I'm saying more so that it's just funny that this is the type of play where people complain about it, and it's like it was all right there for you. There was a million ways that you could build it differently. It's just you don't want to accept it because he's an ownership you don't like. That'll happen way more with Sung Jae later when we get to him, because he's 7,600. People hate the value play chalk that gets there. That's the problem that people usually have. But I just can't see with Lowry. And I'm with Ben on Matsuyama. And hey, Reed, I think, did a lot of cheating before he got his green jacket. So it could be time, pick up another one. Matsuyama has the green jacket, but pick up a US Open. So I actually like him. I like Spieth, Matsuyama, and Lowry quite a bit in that range. And then Zalatoris to round it out. That's the guys I like.
Well, some of these guys have to fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
And I think we saw it at the PGA Championship. Everyone talked about Zalatoris. And was he 11% owned?
Was that it? Yeah, I couldn't remember it was there or the Memorial or wherever it was. That's what I was trying to say to someone. He's going to be 15 to 20. He can't be. There's 3 other guys that people just told me are going to be 15 to 20. How does he become the guy? And sure enough, 11%. That was where it was. So there you go.
So if these guys start building up ownership, so let's say that Xander and Fitz are going to be the highest of this group, then you're going to have Lowry. Zalatoris appears to be a good play. This is a public contest, so Spieth is going to be popular as well, I would think. That means the rest of them can't be as high as you think. And if that's the case, and those 4 or 5 guys are all 15, around 20%, that means the guys above $10,000 are not going to be owned.
Well, they're going to be 15-ish.
Yeah,
more 15-ish,
but then you'll have Morikawa and Hovland be 3%.
But yeah, that's for sure. They up there, or 3 to 7% range. But the Rory thing is the only guy in your list that he's definitely going to be up there. People love Rory. It doesn't even matter what he would have done this week, but he's going to pop in another something this week, a top 5, if not win the whole thing. And that goes with his majors. The same reason he was popular this week. It wasn't because he was the defending champion from 2019 at a completely different course. It's because Rory's been tearing it up lately in majors and everything else. And his game looks good. His stats look good, everything. So he's going to be popular still. But like you said, it will keep a little bit of the other guys in check just naturally, plus the balance builds in general.
The best players from that Skylar Hoke stat of over par holes, playing an average of over par, who plays them the best? Lowry, Scheffler, Rahm, Rory, Xander. Those are your top 5. Fitz, Sungjae, Zalatoris, Wise, Cameron Smith. That's 5 to 10. Then you're into Justin Thomas, Keegan Bradley, Tyrrell Hatton, Colin Morikawa, Mito Pereira, Cam Young, Luke List. Yes, there's a reason. Sam Burns, Tommy Fleetwood, and Maximum Homa would be the top 20 of those guys. Could I just build my player pool of those guys, Ben, and call it a week?
I mean, it sounds good to me as long as Aaron Wise was on the list. So, yeah, it works. And I mean, I do think when you get stats like that, and it's absolutely intriguing, to me, you have to separate a little bit who they are. Like the top 5 names that you read, they're the best players in the world, and they should be on there. I think it's more interesting when you get guys on lists like that that aren't typically amongst them in terms of their peers. And that shows, okay, maybe this is one of their specialties on tour. They have the ability to handle these difficult holes. So like when you hear Keegan or List or Wise, guys that don't belong with Rahm and Scheffler and those names, I think that even weighs heavier on the bump that you can give them.
I think that it's also interesting to know who's not on that list of the top guys. I think that's more of a separation. Like, where's Cantlay?
Yeah, he just looks bad all around anyway. Like, so what you said, we're in the same range still, but we talked to him earlier. He didn't show up on anything that we had. He's not showing up on that list. I don't know where he's going to be. I guess you'll get him at lower ownership, but like you said, even if you want to take a shot, that you already have a guy there that Ben and I both like in Matsuyama. And funny enough, X and Sungjae is Decky and Homa, same 2v2.
Now,
That's exciting.
Cantlay's last 4 starts, mind you, second, first, miscut, third. Guy's playing pretty well.
So maybe that gets some late steam onto him.
But I think people used him so much at both the Players and the PGA Championship this year, and he missed the cut in both. I think they're just done with him. That's how it feels to me, at least.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. No one wants to play him, and like I said, when you got Zalatoris as maybe you said it, we've got X. Then you've got Lowry and then Spieth in the public contests. This is the exact situation for Will Zalatoris again too, with like Lowry, Spieth, and X and Zalatoris. But Zalatoris will be popular. Will he with those other 3? Like who does he kick out there? It gets him that 10 to 12 range again. But then like you said, that means like Cantlay, DJ, those guys won't have as much ownership, and of course Matsuyama can't have the ownership too.
So of the $9,000 guys, Matsuyama is the preferred pivot for both you guys.
I like him. Yep.
Yeah, for me.
Okay. I kind of did. You know what? Who loves Spieth? The numbers.
I love Spieth too, but we're just like if Lowry's right there, and we're going to get to it in the $8,900 range or $8,900 price in the 8K range is Neiman, a guy that's always a fan favorite. They Best Buy priced him here. He's not 9,000. He's not 9,100, where it would have set the ownership a little bit further apart. He's $8,900. So when you go to him at $8,900, and you've seen it lately in these tournaments, he gets that late steam. It's Neiman. He's good. He's good again now, which he always was. People forget he's as young as the Cam Youngs and the guys of the world, and he's won tournaments. So I think Neiman still gets a little steam here. Cam Young is the more interesting one at $8,800.
I like Cam Young this week, and if we take a look at the entire $8,000 range, you do have Neiman leading it off at $8,900, and then it goes into Cam Young, Brooks, and Billy. We talked about those two coming in lower owned. Fitz probably the highest owned guy in the entire slate. It seems like there is a bit of steam building for Daniel Berger right now because I think that he lines up pretty well. But how popular can you be when you have Burns, Finau, and Homa all after him? Homa, he's going to draw a ton of interest. So is Finau. Burns, we'll wait and see. Then Hatton rounds it out. Hatton's not going to be used after... He really broke my heart this week in Canada. +8 and a missed cut was not what I was expecting from St. George's, from Tyrrell Hatton. But the numbers like him moderately. I'm good not playing Hatton. I understand that he's got a good low-owned play, but I just don't know if he's got the goods for this particular course. We'll wait and see, because there's guys in the top of that $7,000 range I might like a little bit better, who are probably not necessarily equivalent owned, but not highly owned at the same time. I think this all comes down to Fitz. Can you fade Fitz?
I think so, yeah. At $8,500, if you look at them there, like you said, I got Berger, Horschel, Burns, Finau, Homa, Hatton, Young, and Neiman. Like, literally, this whole range is playable. Why? I think, again, it leans to the balanced build because these are guys that could you not see some of these guys winning the tournament? Cam Young almost just won the PGA Championship. He was on like hole 15 at 6 under. It went to a playoff at 5 under. He was right there. Billy Horschel just won a tournament, a very tough tournament at the Memorial with a strong field. The list can go on. Now we're talking about Burns, 3 wins on the season. Finau has upside, at least at his price. But I'm just saying there's lots of options here that you could go to over Fitz. And he's where I'm saying I'd rather just find the $500 and go to Lowry than play the Fitz chalk because he won the USAM in 2013 and has been playing better lately.
You bet Fitz to win this week in Canada, Benjamin. will you have the confidence to fade Matthew Fitzpatrick? Because I'm torn on it. I think he's a great play. But as to Tambo's point, with Berger and Burns right there, I don't know if he's better than those guys.
So I think that he is better than those guys, but he's probably not better than those guys in terms of the massive difference potentially in some of the ownership pivots. Like if everybody was the same exact ownership in the 8K range, I would play Fitz probably first. It would be him or Neiman for me. That's not going to be the case, obviously. So you have to start evaluating like that. I want to get to some Fitzy. I think this great setup for him, not just because of the amateur thing. I think he's playing good golf. He missed the cut, 2 weeks ago. That was his career worst putting. That was a complete outlier. That doesn't matter. I'm interested to see how popular Berger is because I think like Cantlay, he's starting to get the label of like he's great outside the big tournaments. You can't play him in majors. And I want to know if that will impact people's decisions or they'll say, you know what, this is a good setup for him. I'm going to go to Berger because I think that's one of the easiest pivots to make if it's a massive, massive ownership discount.
Pretty decent US Open track record for Daniel Berger. Missed one cut since 2014, 2 top 10 finishes in the past 4 years at the US Open. And listen, he's a lot like the skill set that I was talking about with Morikawa, where he doesn't have plus distance, but he hits every fairway. That's Daniel Berger. But he's much better around the greens and a far more consistent putter. And he does have the same iron upside. It's just not as frequent as Colin Morikawa. But the other stuff is more frequent. That's more consistent that you see from him. I just think he's a very safe play where Fitzpatrick we can see blow up from time. Not that we don't see that from Daniel Berger too, but if you're going to use Fitz, let's say you're good with fading Fitz. Let's say you want to use Fitz. How do you use Fitz then?
Yeah, that's the problem. Like I said, I think it's going to be
Can't use Sungjae, probably. Can't use Xander.
I think you have to use them. Here's one strategy that I give. We talked about it when we did our strategy show. If you guys haven't checked that out, you should definitely go check it because it's an exact example here. We'll do it with Sungjae later too. Everyone goes to Fitz, and what do? Who do I pivot to? Well, you're allowed to play him and the pivot. So you put the two of them together. And in an example here, let's say you get different up top. You go with, you could build it out, but if you went to Rahm or Morikawa up top, drop down to Fitz and Berger, and then you probably end up in almost the same price range where, again, don't put Sungjae in there and just go with some other guys in that 7K range. You end up with a unique lineup that still includes Fitz, and you use him plus who people are pivoting to in the exact same lineup together. The biggest challenge I have with him, though, and we didn't talk about this, but was the Burns factor. Burns costs more than him in Canada this week, even with the stretcher on. Burns has more wins than almost everybody on top of him in the field this year alone, on top of what he's been doing lately. He's priced at 8,300, yet we might get a little bit lucky here in the sense that will he still be somewhat popular? Sure, but it fits the same mold as the Zalatoris factor where you can say that, but then everyone's still clicking the guys around him. Neiman will still get clicked. Finau people love. Homa people have loved lately. You've got Fitz right there. Berger is getting talked up as the pivot, so he'll get some. Burns will too, but I'm just saying, we're talking about keeping it in check versus getting out of proportion. It just can't. I don't see how it does.
How would you construct these Fitz lineups, Ben? Or do you say, hey, let's not even use Fitz because not everyone can be popular, like Tambo pointed out, and use the guy who's probably going to win it, Cameron Young?
Well, yeah, if I never get Cameron Ring, but I think point's well taken. One of the easiest ways to do it is to take the guy that's the pivot and just combine them. And then it's just, what we've all talked about. You're going to have to find ways to be unique. So some of those against the grain plays, like I think Hideki would be a nice target in there. Certainly if you like Hovland or Morikawa and you start with them and you want to use Fitzy, you're going to have much less problems. I think the real big problem is if you are like, I really love Fitzy and I really love Xander. It can be done, but now you're really starting to be thin and you've only used 2 players.
Well, what if I really love Sungjae too? What happens then?
I'm not sure. I mean, of course it can work, but like Xander, Sungjae, Fitzy is a combination in the Millie Maker that you're going to need to do something really crazy. And I'm just not sure that's the move that, even though I like all 3 of them on paper, as most do, I'm not sure I'm going to pair them up in any lineups.
Tambo, Brooks or Horschel?
Horschel. I'm done with Brooks at majors. So, but like this guy, we've been chasing it. If this is the spot, it finally bounces back and gets to us. But I just think there's a lot of other stuff going on. He's even joking about the live stuff on Twitter, posting the eyeballs emojis, having fun with it. I still think he could go there. I don't know. I don't see it at all. He just had his wedding, which we definitely saw, just partying it up, having a good. He should do that. It's his life. Have fun with it. Make money. Have fun. At the same time, though, it's just tough to go there at that price.
Brooks or Billy, Ben?
I mean, I'd rather play Paul Casey than both of them, even though he's not playing.
WD.
I guess it would be Brooks, but I can't see myself clicking either.
I have a really tough time clicking on Billy Ho here. And I know everyone's going to. That's why he's projected 3% ownership. But coming off that win, it's funny that a win just makes people not want to play.
It's so odd, and because he went on a podcast right after with the.
I didn't listen to it. I tried to stay away from a lot of that stuff to not cloud my mind too much. But I think there is something to the once you win, like you've hit your upside. And it's so hard to maintain that upside. Not that he needs to hit his upside in order to be a value this week or be a great play this week, but it just feels like there's a come down off of that for some guys. Maybe not every guy in the field, and we've kind of seen that with Horschel over the years, that his major performance just isn't all that good. That would be my biggest thing, that like you go and look at his US Open, he was 4th at Chambers Bay, but other than that, 23rd, 25th, 32nd, those were the 3 years after, miscut, 32nd, 38th, miscut. It just feels like the USGA setup is not great for him, but maybe he's a different guy now. He's won a WGC, the European Players Championship, and Memorial in the past year, basically. So maybe he's just a different guy.
I think he's a different guy, and that's what I was going to say. It's a podcast, it can't cloud your vision. I don't think he's going to be popular because where he's priced in that range, just the way lineup construction goes and everything. But what I will say, his main point was about the major. He's got now the 7 wins. He's won the FedEx Cup. Like, he's trying to continue to build his legacy. He's shaking Jack Nicklaus's hand 2 weeks ago to like be like, okay, now how do I cement this? That would be to go out and win something like this. Also, you mentioned it earlier, and it's brought up a couple times. Hatton and Billy Horschel, both second at the API, where Scheffler won. You talked API in comparison a little bit. So I just think that's another interesting takeaway. It doesn't mean why you play a guy. I'm saying that's just tying things together a little bit where it can kind of make sense. And I think it's really good for unique builds using a guy like Billy Horschel this week.
Would you rather spend, Ben, if I don't want to put a gun to your head because that's we don't do that on this show. Tambo and I are Canadian. We're not going to be doing that. We're
nice guys.
I mean, yeah, we're nice guys.
We handle that.
Yeah, not really. Not really here. If I had to tell you had to make one of these pivot plays, would it be Billy Horschel at 8,600 or would it be Hatton at 8,000?
Oh, it was not even close for me. It would be Hatton at 8,000. Now, Hatton seemingly doesn't like any golf course. Like I was okay with him ripping the first 6 courses, but now every week there's a problem with the setup. I'm not sure exactly what's going on with his game. In theory, I think that he, in some regards, has the type of game that I want here. Let's just keep talking API. Why not? Well, if there's one course that Ty Hatton seems to love, it is at Bay Hill. So maybe there is something to that. I think Hatton has an actual shot to bounce back and look good this week.
Top 3 in this range that you're playable wise for you, not just we're going to include what our interpretation of ownership is, what the pricing is, and how you want to deploy them in your lineups. I like Berger the best. I like Cam Young second. And I think you've talked me into Sam Burns at 8,300 as my third favorite.
Yeah, I think it's Berger, Burns, and Horschel for me.
Ben?
Well, we should have it covered because I got totally different guys. It would be Neiman, Fitzy, and Finau for me.
I'm good with it. I mean, it's going to be really difficult once I sit there. It's one thing for us to talk about, and theoretically, what are we going to do? And we have to start building lineups. How hard is it going to be to leave Fitzpatrick out of it? Because he's going to pop up as a great play. We know he's a good. If it wasn't for the ownership, would he be a great play?
I don't even think it's just the ownership. I don't have him as the best play in this range. I think it's what I always talk about on the show, and especially at majors. Sometimes you just have to bet on the talent. And you're going to say, what do you mean? He's very talented. Look at him. He got wins overseas, all this stuff. I'm not hating on the guy like I do some of the others.
He won at this course before. He's the only one who's won at this course.
That's got to be the worst argument of the week. But like I said, a guy like Sam Burns literally won 3 times this season. And it's for whatever reason, he's going to come in lower owned. So that is bringing ownership back in. But it's just aside from the fact. Billy Horschel just won at the Memorial, where people were jumping on Fitz. Guess what? That guy above him, $100 more, won the tournament. So I really have a hard time with it either way. I think you were talking earlier, if you want to play X and him and Sungjae Im, there's lots of great cash games out in the lobby that you can hop into. My boy Kenny Kim will be loving those plays, I'm sure, when we get to the podcast.
Yeah, when you guys are filming on
Sunday night.
On Sunday evening for release for the Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast up on Mayo Media Network. Everyone should definitely go watch that. Yeah, can we try to predict Kenny's cash game core, his core 4?
Oh, easily. Right now, X, Fitz, Sungjae, and probably Fleetwood. I think he's going to bring
I was going to say Riley.
Yeah, it's one of Fleetwood or Riley. Guaranteed. There's the 4, and he'll add his 5th in now because we gave it away. He'll love this. But yeah, it's definitely with those 3 and then one of those other 2.
7Ks. Already ran through who the chalky guys are going to be. I'm good with fading Fleetwood if he's going to be. I want to keep an eye on his ownership because he has been depressed recently. But as we've seen with Finau and as we've seen with Xander, once they take that momentary dip, because they're those three guys people love to play week after week after week. I would say Fitzpatrick's another one too that kind of falls into that. Paul Casey for the longest time was a part of that group. And then Fleetwood, he just played crappy. And then everyone finally got off him. He plays well once, everyone's all the way back in. It kind of happened with Finau too. So I do think that it's likely that his ownership gets up, but Mito's going to be very popular. We'll see how Connors finishes. Connors was third. We talked about the US Amateur not meaning anything, but Connors was third at this course. And I think that the Connors skill set is something to think about this week. Guy sucks putting, but these are some of the smallest greens that you're going to find. I do think that mitigates putting a lot because you're not going to see very many 3-putts this week at Brookline. So there's that. He also can't chip. He's getting better chipping, mind you, but he's long-ish off the tee. He's above average to average off the tee, and he hits a ton of fairways. Going back to that skill set, if people want to use Mito, and I like Mito, or Fleetwood, Connors just kind of sits there at $7,900. It's funny that Bryson's the same price. I think this is an awful setup for Bryson, by the way.
Yeah, I'm with you. Everything you said earlier on Bryson, all the other stuff aside, again, people want to bring that into their stuff they're doing, and it's not for me. But I love the Connors call, actually, because he's heating up a little bit on Saturday as we speak. But again, he's the sort of what we always talk about, the Canadian Morikawa. What did I mention earlier with guys like JT Morikawa? If he's missing fairways, which he doesn't miss very many, by the way, Corey Connors already, he has an incredible approach game. He has an incredible long iron game. So even if he does, or when he does, miss those fairways, he clicks it out. I want him taking that 180-yard shot to there, and his around the green game is not the best, but it has not been bad sand save wise, bogey avoidance wise in general in the past. So I think he can still find his way out of that problem.
Over the past 36 rounds, 7th in this field in bogey avoidance, which blew my mind.
It's just not a lot of mistakes. And that's the other thing, like I said, when he does make the mistake, he actually has a true path out of it. And what we always say, too, you just talked about mitigating the putting at this course, but the other factor of it is the smaller greens. As we talk about at RBC Heritage, as we talked about for this week past at the Canadian Open, look, it's a 5 to 15 footer. At least he's not going to have to lag it from 40 feet out or something. You know, he's fine in that case. So I think Corey Connors fits the mold perfectly.
You have the three of them in a row here, Ben. Connors, Wise, and Mito. I know Mito is going to be the most popular of that bunch. Connor's probably the least popular of that bunch, with Wise, somewhere in the middle. I like all three of those guys here. Although I have a feeling that Cuss is going to pick Mito to win, which would be horrible for Mito's chances.
Well, that'd be good. I'm not going to play Mito. So I do think that, and of course, we'll see how ownership kind of matures as the week goes on. But I think there's a chance that something weird happens in this range because you've got Mito, who people are going to play. Corey Connors is playing really well on Saturday. I think he's going to steam up. Aaron Wise is playing good golf. Fleetwood, we've already talked about. And then Sanjay's the most obvious chalk maybe on the entire slate. I don't know how all of them are going to be popular. Some of them will be moderately owned, and I think that's pretty interesting. And then, of course, we've got Usti, who's just there, and he's going to be the obvious pivot.
We're going to get to the play the best plays lineup at the end. You and I already constructed one, but here's how that ownership stays in. Everyone uses Xander. Everyone uses Matthew Fitzpatrick, and then they go to the top of the $7,000 range and be like, oh, I can play Mito. Oh, I can play Sungjae. Oh, I have $8,200 left now. I can use Finau. Oh, I have $8,300 left. I can still use Max Homa. Like that is a lineup that 4 of those 6 guys are going to be at a lot of people's lineups this week.
Yeah, big time. And that's to Ben's point there. Like we'll figure it out by the time we get there. I love the Louis pivot that he brought up. It's one of the guys I would have liked. All the live stuff aside, don't care. I just think at his price at $7,600.
I watched some of the live stuff. You know why Louis isn't not necessarily in contention, but he's inside the top 10 or something as we're talking about this now. Dude couldn't putt all week, which was really strange. Not typical Louis type stuff, but he was dialed in off the tee with his irons.
Love to hear that. And then again, back to the Corey Connors, again, Louis is a way better putter, but incredibly better. But at the same point, we still want Louis on these shorter, the smaller greens. He's got a good around the green game, clicks it up is what he needs to make an 8-footer. I feel much better about him standing over it than some of the other guys. So I'm good with Louis for sure here.
Ben, a guy who used to caddy at the course did tell me with the way that they set up the 18 holes for the US Open and these major championships, be it the Amateur, the Women's Amateur, the Ryder Cup, that if you're going to miss, you want to miss to the right. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I've heard it from 2 separate people who have ties to the course right now, that missing on the right is far better than missing to the left in having your recovery and still having angles into the green. I did put left avoidance into my fantasy national model this week. Do you think that is me trying to galaxy brain too much here, or do you think that there could be something to that?
I mean, is there like lava on like what's the difference? If it's just all rough, I think it might be a little too much. But I will say, when you're breaking down plays like this and you get to guys and you're looking at 50-50, I don't think it's crazy to use those as tiebreakers, things like that. That's something I've never really considered. But again, we're in ranges where it's very thin margins. And if ownership is flat amongst some of these guys, you do have to pull in stats like that to maybe break the tie.
Could you get to answer here, despite the fact he hasn't gained on approach in like 3 months?
No, just because I if I'm gonna do something, possibly disgraceful in this range, I'll just play Louis. Like Louis accomplishes everything that I want to do if I'm gonna go that route.
I think I kind of like Louis as well.
Yeah, I was in on him heavy
He's just
beforehand.
built for
It doesn't
this.
matter. Even if whatever ends up happening from here on out pushes some over from that Sungjae stuff, again, it won't be enough. Easy to get overweight.
Munoz at 74 really stuck out to me as well as someone I think that can play really well at this setup. He can be like +2 going into the weekend, something like that, and make a little bit of a mini run. But you always think of him as, oh man, Byron Nelson, Sanderson Farms, let's go out and make 27 birdies. But his overall game is just sharp. I don't think he has a chance at winning, but could he be T13? Yeah, I think he could.
Yeah, I think so too, and I like him here. And it also just goes back to what we talked about earlier, just with the lineup construction. You mentioned it at the top, Pat. We've got, could Corey Connors pick up some? Absolutely, but we already have Mito, Wise, Fleetwood, and now Louis, Sungjae, of course.
Keegan.
Keegan is right here. So I think when you get down here to the Munoz range, and again, Riley will pick up some, maybe Henley, but you've got Munoz, Sergio, Kokrak, HV3, again, some more, at least rumored guys for LIV, but at the same time, I don't think many people will go there and have strong all-around games, tee to green games, around the green games, all the things that we're going to want for here. So I think going down just into this range, pick your guys, but I think this roster construction sets you up differently than the upper 7K range for sure.
The other one that stuck out to me, I do like Davis Riley, by the way. I think that he is, depending on where he ends up coming in at 7,300, he's a pretty good play. It was Seb Straka at 7,200 that when I started looking at a lot of the driving stats, this around the green, bogey avoidance, that just Seb Straka, Ben. I don't think anyone's going to use him.
No, I don't think people are going to use him. And, I will say credit to Seb Straka. He's someone, he won. And he is not, he's not playing the best golf in the world, but he had a couple good finishes after that. His around the green game has gotten a lot better. I'll be honest, I would click Leishman as just a complete flyer before I'd click Sepp Straka, just because I like Leishman kind of in these type of events. But there are some names here, and then I don't think I've ever done this. You mentioned we've been doing shows for 6 years. I'm not sure I've ever recommended Webb Simpson.
Ooh.
But I don't know. I'm not crossing him out just yet, and that's as close as I can come to endorsing that guy. He seems to fit the mold here a little bit.
He actually had a really nice run at the US Open going. The issue with him, do we think that anyone from down in this range is going to win?
Oh, probably not. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Do you, Ben?
I think Patrick Reed could win, but probably not.
So what you're dealing with is, if you do want upside potential from down here, maybe you don't think they're going to win, so you want to play top 20 potential and grab those placement points with a potential top 10. I think Webb could fit that mold pretty well, but I think if you're going to try to shoot the moon a little bit more, you'd want your longer hitter. Just being a shorter hitter like Webb, who is still, he's clearly not Webb from coming out of COVID Webb. Like that Webb seems to be gone at this point. Maybe he can get it back. Maybe this is the week. I see no real signs of that sort of elite play returning, that it just becomes too difficult for him because he just doesn't hit. It's one thing to be slightly below average with your distance and hit every fairway, like Connors or Morikawa or even Berger. It's another thing to be even shorter than that and still not hit as many fairways as those guys. It just puts you in such a precarious situation at a course like this.
Yeah, I think so, big time. And that's like you said, it's just when you're playing down here, you're looking for pure value. So could he get there for you? Sure. I actually don't mind that $15 we talked about. I think it's right. Take a shot on it. But for me, I just think there's too many other options when you've already got Gooch,
Phil,
Munoz, Sergio Garcia, Henley. Even going down from there's other guys down at the bottom that we didn't even get to yet. Your boy Si Woo, Kevin Na. There's other options that I can play here for pure value that I think are doing it or can do it.
Are you going to play Henley?
I am, yeah.
Ben?
I'll probably play Sergio before I play Henley, but I would play Henley before I play Davis Riley.
I'd play Davis.
I'm not playing Davis Riley.
That's what I was just, okay. Ben's speaking here. That's perfect because that's what I was trying to say here. That's exactly why I'm doing it, because I think he leans out way better. All the numbers across the board, long term, everything. Good US Open track record, solid around the green game if he does get into trouble. And Riley's a good price and been playing incredible, but there's just too many other names here. Sergio, Russell. Like I'm going Henley over Riley. That's what I'm looking at.
I think that there is a scenario where Henley is more owned than Davis Riley.
It won't be by enough, even if it could. If you think so, if you think that, what are the numbers then? Like,
I just think that the numbers are going to, like, any time, and this comes back to when people are mass multi-entering, the 150 style players, a lot of them, what do they use to make their lives? They're not hand building. They're using optimizers to build it. And I think it will spit out Henley.
Yeah, so if we go,
it always does. Stats love Henley.
So like 14 to 12, or what are we? It's not going to be
14% sounds about right, and Riley's probably right around there.
Yeah.
And your boy HV3's right there too.
I'm playing HV3. I like him. I don't care what happens this week. He battled back even after he had a really good first round. Round 2 was kind of tough, but I think HV3 is a good play. Again, he messes up on Sundays, but at 7,300, I'm not expecting him to go out and win the thing.
By the numbers, the best plays from the bottom of this range, Hoagie is the best. I'm not doing that again. It does not ever work out well for me. Woodland, Varner, Riley, Henley. Those would be the 5 best from this range.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll just say, like even on the Riley factor, it goes with everything that we said earlier.
The O'Reilly factor?
No, the old Riley factor, if we want to call it that. But that you can play Riley with Henley, right, and be different that way. And again,
or just play list.
Yeah, oh, you could do that. But the point would be like the upper 7K range is where the ownership's going in here. So if you just want to play a few of these guys at the bottom of the 7K range to fit stuff up top, I don't have any problem with that as a unique build either.
Will anyone go back to Alex Noren, Ben?
I mean, I'm sure I will, but for the rest of civilization, probably not. The thing, he was trending upward, and now he's just completely lost at tee to green. The putting will stay, it seems. I find myself looking at, you mentioned that, of course, you want to have some distance, but if you don't, you better be able to hit these fairways. Brian Harman, even though he's certainly not the longest hitter out there, he does have some things that I like here. He's going to make his fair share of putts, and I don't think the distance will be that big of a deal for him. I actually expect him to play well.
Brian Harman is 9th in total strokes gained at the past 5 U.S. Opens, and he only played in 4 of them.
Yeah.
Good.
There is something that is, although these courses are all different, there is something to be said about guys who can handle a USGA setup.
Yeah.
Like, they know the tricks, they know the trades, and they know where they can make their mistakes and not have it be as penal. He seems to be one of those guys. Noren is another one. He has top 25s at 2 of the past 3 U.S. Opens that he's played in. And I think people are finished with Noren after the PGA Championship.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. And then there's fan favorites here, of like your fan favorites at the exact same price, both Luke List and Siwoo Kim.
Do we think that Luke List will actually be popular?
No, I don't think any of these guys will, to be honest. I don't see any of these guys getting enough ownership to matter. You play them or you don't. I think they're great ways to get unique because at the end of the day, like we said, even the balance builds can end on Sungjae, can end on Riley or Henley if it ends up being him, whatever. It just doesn't get to this level. So all these guys will be under-owned in comparison to the guys above.
I could use Harman. Well, Big T is Harman's biggest fan, right?
Yeah,
he
hates the khakis that he wears, but he won him the $1 million at the Players.
So he'll be going back to him.
Oh, for sure. And I'll be betting him with Kevin Na for big money. So I'll just play a 1v1, Kevin Na versus Harman. I
actually like Harman's for this setup more than I like Na. I just think it's tough to say, really. Harman's had more success at this major. Na feels like he's had more success at every other major.
Yeah.
And they are legitimately different setups.
And you can play them both.
You could play them both. I would rather play List. I'd rather play Harman. I'd rather play Noren. I think that's where I'd want to be. And Woodland at 7,100. I'm a slut for Woodland, man.
Yeah. I don't hate that one. I put a question mark beside him to see what you said about him because, again, it's still Woodland. Like, anything could happen. And at 7,100, he's a fair play. But, what's your argument for him? What do you like about him?
It's the driving.
Yeah.
Just the driving still hasn't gone anywhere. And if you can be a long, accurate driver and have the power to get it out of this rough, I mean, I don't think that Patrick Rogers is a horrible play either. He's never missed a cut at a U.S. Open. He played very well at the Amateur when it was here. He's used to USGA setups. He plays hard courses really well. He's not a shootout type of guy. He's a let's scramble, get it up and down, and make some 17-foot par putts. You're going to need a bit of that putt luck on your side, but he generally does possess that. So I'm not against him either, and he's having a pretty good week at the Canadian Open. If he has a really good week, he might balloon to be the guy in this range, and then you can get off him. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But is there going to be anything anything more obvious, Ben, than you tune in at like 1 p.m. on Thursday afternoon? I don't even know we don't know the tee times yet. But let's say he's in the morning wave on the course. Then Justin Rose is just going to be casually 3 under par.
Yeah, that's what Justin Rose does because he only plays well in the majors. Seems to be able to turn it on. I just don't. I think I would use him instead of Wood. Like you were just talking about Woodland. I think if I was going to just completely splash on someone, it would be Justin Rose. Kind of like Leishman for me, where I just play them because I think they kind of know what they're doing. I don't know if the talent is there per se, but I do believe Justin Rose is very suited to kind of handle a USGA setup.
How did he do day 2 in Canada? Because he made every putt day 1 in Canada.
Who?
Justin Rose.
I don't remember, to be honest. I don't have it up in front of me.
I just remember watching round 1. I forget who he was playing with. It's like, oh, here's Justin Rose for par from 54 feet. Oh, it's in.
He does that.
It's like, that's the Justin Rose you want to see at major championships because he'll end up grinding through the cut.
Round 1, just making a bunch of putts. Round 2, nothing. Terrible. And still made a bunch of putts. And
Did he make the cut?
Oh, yeah. He's T9, 3 under through 12 today as we speak. So
there we go.
There you go.
Uh-oh.
Would you be comfortable ending at one of these? I mean, yes, obviously you would be comfortable ending at one of these 7K guys, but to have like a double 7K, 7,100 7K as your last 2 guys in, be it Rogers and Liss, Noren and Woodland, or Justin Rose and whoever as your final 2 guys, or do you say Peters?
I did mutter that, but he's there.
I see it. I see his name.
I mean, the one thing he's got going for him is like, at the US Open, if you're like 4 over through 8, you don't have to panic. He's always 4 over through 8. So he's not going to be like, in panic mode. That's just kind of how he plays lately. I don't know if I can click his name though.
So you're saying good skill experience for difficult courses for Thomas Peters because he plays easy courses like they're hard courses.
He will not be rattled if he's on pace to shoot like 85 because he's been there before. That's all I'll say.
Do you think that we know that like the Sungjae ending, Riley ending, Henley ending is going to be very common amongst these balance builds, even the high end builds if you want to use one of the 10K guys. Do you want to go into the $6,000 range, or do you think it's just acceptable to use these guys at $7,000?
I think you can easily cut it off here, like just going down to the. I always consider like 6,700 to 7. It's oftentimes the same. They just have to squeeze down. Like they already have what 5 or I think they have 6 guys this week at 7,000, maybe 7 at 7,000. Like they're done. They can only put so many at the exact same price till they go to the next tier.
It does feel like a legitimate cutoff in talent this week, though.
It really does. Oh yeah, overall I agree with you. I'm saying that's why I'll consider up from there. I actually don't. I'm still waiting. Harry Hall, who you mentioned, winning the Corn Ferry Tour event over Nick Hardy or whatever in the playoff. Like I don't know.
Hey, I used Nick Hardy in Canada. He was good.
He's crushing right now. He had a huge day today, so I love that call. Ryan Fox. Can you go back? Like he's long off the tee, and we've said already how that's kind of what he does, and that doesn't matter as much versus needing all the other stuff and parts of your game. Kitayama. I guess one thing I would say, Pat, just looking at this event, like who do you see, or Ben, as what you see up and comers? Like we used to have remember Xander was like the year the guy played him 80%. He was $6,100, and the guy shipped the Millie Maker. Like who is
Will Zalatoris?
Zalatoris was one.
Wingfoot was down here. I think Harry Hall could be that guy.
There you go. Maybe he is. That's what I'm saying. I think that's what you kind of got to look for down here as to, just you're taking a bet on talent, and that's it.
Min Woo, I think, is so hit and miss, but I do think that he has a ton of talent. He's also at $6,400, very long off the tee. Min Woo Lee.
I think his sister just won, Minji Lee, the women's US Open, I believe.
Is that actually his sister?
The major. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's definitely his sister.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm just saying, talking about motivation. Like, and he's good enough. He's a good player. So it's just, but not consistent enough. So worth a shot in something like the $15 maybe for sure.
So Ben, I think you can go one of two ways down here, obviously. I mean, there's a bunch of ways you can go. But for me, it would be sort of those distance type players or the bet on skill type players of someone when we think about the US Open a year from now, they're $8,100 players, that kind of thing. I think that's a viable strategy. Oh, I see your boy Soderberg's down here too. I feel like
who?
Oh, no, you're Maximilian Kiefer. That's your guy.
Yeah, he's not here for. I think he might have been thrown off both tours. I haven't seen him.
He's begging to join the LIV Tour and they won't let him. Or
yeah, he has to pay them.
Or the other. We could go the other way. He has to pay them to play on the LIV Tour. He's doing the camera on YouTube. But what Tambo said earlier about accuracy potentially, and then being able to scramble, get the ball up and down. I think there are two pretty obvious names that stick out to me, even 3. I don't know if Molinari's got the juice back yet, but he's $6,900. Kisner has been god-awful, but he does stick out as a hard course player, great around the greens, good at courses with small greens. Then Lucas Herbert and Mackenzie Hughes, those 4 guys at the very top, like if you just want to pivot from what everyone is expecting people to do this week, I think that they have this sort of like, why the hell is that guy in 8th place? Like all he's doing is making these 17-foot putts, but like one of these guys is going to be there.
Yeah, I like that angle because it goes opposite of what, like you said, you're picking and choosing here, but people always look at like distance as a tiebreaker at US Open. We're saying you could look at short game with accuracy. You could look at the veterans that are here. Like you mentioned, Molinari, Kisner, those are 2 guys that they're just priced at 6,900. What's the big difference? They just haven't been playing as well. Molinari coming back a little bit maybe, but just in general, they could find their way up there. And then the other way to go about it, which I actually prefer, is like I said, trying to find some of these guys, just talented guys that you expect to be expensive next year, because that's where, they always break out at some point before you expect. So I like to target it up that way. There's just not a lot I see this week. I did double check it while we were on here. Minjee Lee, which is definitely his sister, as I knew, did win the US Women's Open. That's what it was at Pine Needles or whatever that course was called. Nice course. Min Woo, that's the narrative this week.
How would you play the range, Ben?
So I do think, again, if you're going to build to like, say you want to use guys like Webb and stuff, I would look to pair with Molinari and those type of players. At the bottom, I'm not sure what to do if I don't do that, though. Like, I looked at Thunder Bear is down here. Like, I don't know. What else are we going to do? Sam Horsfield? I tried that at the last major. It was a disaster at the PGA. I'm with you. You want to look for those, up-and-comers, those high-talent guys. But, like, is Tom Kim that guy this year? Like, I don't know if those guys are in this field.
Looking at, Molinari is a weird one that kind of sticks out because he's at 6,900, past 3 U.S. Opens, including last year when he was god-awful, but he was T13 at the U.S. Open, T16 before that, T25. Now, obviously, Molinari at a different stage of his career right now, but that T13 really does stick out to me. He did that at Torrey Pines somehow, and he was much worse last year than he is this time this year. I think Herbert is the one. Herbert just, whenever it's a cut to Lucas Herbert, you know what he's doing, Ben? He's chipping in.
Yeah,
I can confirm that. Can he survive? I think you have to look towards, if you really think that off the tee and the rough is going to be punishing that much, I'm not sure that he's going to be in those. But he really can't drive the ball at all.
No, neither can Mackenzie Hughes, really. You think for a guy with such lack of distance that he would have like great accuracy, and he doesn't. He's like one of the least accurate players off the tee on tour.
Yeah, that's deadly. When you can't hit it far and you're not accurate, it's. What about Joel Dahman?
Feel like this course is just too hard for him.
Yeah, the fairways guy, to your point earlier.
Fairways guy, but
let's play him that way and say that's the thing. But will the rest come around? Realistically, like Kodaira's a fairways guy and good with the longer irons, that you could see that.
But do you know what these guys can't do? Chip. Get it, bogey avoidance. Like, they're just horrible at it.
Well, that's why I was going back to your Lucas Herbert play. By the way, 7th at the API this year. We got a theme going here with this API thing. Maybe build out an Arnold Palmer Invitational lineup. But if you just look, like at that tournament, 6 strokes around the green, 8 with the putter. You go to the PGA Championship where he came 13th. He kind of had it all together. Nope, 9 strokes with the putter. Like, you just got unrealistic numbers with these guys. But at least he has potential. He was good at the Memorial last year, good at the Memorial this year. Some consistency in that way. Good at the last major. Made the cut at the Memorial. So Herbert, kind of interesting. Again, I don't think the Magic Beans will do it all, but they're kind of important around here. And we liked Spieth earlier, too. We talked about with him. Could Reed do it, we said? Yes, so it fits sort of that build as well. So I don't hate that call.
I do think it's Harry Hall for me, $6,400. If you have to go down, I think he and Min Woo stand out to me, at least. Maybe you guys have someone different. Maybe you're back on the Guido train. I don't know. I don't know what sort of numbers Sky is going to like fudge up this week to point to Guido. Bo Hostler is down here as well. And he's still kind of, like, he has a ton of distance and he's great around the greens.
Yeah. The B in Bo stands for bad usually. So I'm not going to try that one because done it enough times. I don't think it's a good call.
But yeah, Min Woo, Harry Hall as the flyer, I don't think you need to go down here. Was kind of my point about can you make the cutoff 7,300 or 7,000? But if you wanted to and try to squeeze some of these guys in, I think those are the names. Unless, Ben, you want to tell me, you were talking about Thunder Bear, maybe Kalle Schmuja from Finland is the guy that you want.
No. Who is Sebastian Soderberg?
He's a German player.
Okay.
He's the good Max Kiefer.
He's the good Max Kiefer. Yeah, I'm not gonna pick him. I'm not gonna pick any of these guys. What about Brandon West guy? And then I'll stop talking. What about Brandon Grace?
Lives Brandon Grace?
Yeah, another live. Obviously, like old Brandon Grace, the narrative was like he was the US Open god. And now he's just another South African, but I don't know. I'm not going to go there. I'd rather play Molinari, but he's at least a name that we kind of can decipher what they do. As these European guys or Sean the South Africans, it's hard to get a gauge on what these guys can even do down here.
Brendan Grace has been so bad in 2022.
That's the slight issue that I have with him. Yeah,
so bad. Like, I can see why he went to the LIV Tour. Go get that bag, man. Like, that's he was making literally no money on the PGA Tour. He was playing for he was paying to play on the PGA Tour. So getting someone to pay him just to show up was a good career move for his bank account, I think.
Yeah, well said.
Of note, he's sitting third in the LIV event right now, Brandon Grace.
Are they 1, 2, 3? That
1,
team?
2, 3. Yeah, they're going to win the team event based on that. And
Please
he's
tell
already
me that
getting
Where's Uline?
Please tell me.
I thought Uline was going to win.
Uline killed a dude. He hit it off
I
course.
saw he did murder someone. Yeah.
Yeah, and also up there, Sam Horsfield. Sam Horsfield's the other guy. I know Ben said I don't want to. He's done that experiment. It's always an experiment, I think, when you're playing guys down in this range. If you're playing guys down in this range, so you don't have to do it. But he's another guy that would go with what you mentioned with Minwoo Lee and Harry Hall as just a talent that we know is capable of showing up for 1 week. Like it could happen. So
Could you break some news to me to tell me that Henny Dupuis is winning this event?
not yet. No.
Is he still in second?
Yeah.
Okay. How far back?
It's not updating. So
They don't have a live leaderboard, so
yeah,
stuff.
that's the problem.
Last time I checked, he was down by 4. I need that guy to win.
Yeah, we'll see. Nothing yet.
Who is that?
Henny Dupuis?
Yeah, you got to text me.
It's
these
like
type
Henny
of
Henny
can't miss
Duplessis.
spots.
Yeah, whatever the hell his name is.
Plessis.
Henny. It's just he's this random dude that Sky started betting on the Euro Tour, so I started betting him on the Euro Tour. He's like, actually, he absolutely mashes it off the tee.
There's so many of those guys on the European Tour.
Yeah,
50 of them. Oh, they hit it 450. This guy, Mega Bomber. And now it's Steven Soderbergh or whatever. The guy.
yeah, Sex Lies and Soderbergh at the US
Yeah, the
Open.
guy who directed Traffic is on the PGA Tour. Who knew? Okay.
You want to play? Let's just try to play the best plays. So if people are just tuning in, play the best plays is you're trying to double your money in a cash game. Although I keep entering these lineups, like we made the one this week for the Canadian Open. Really good lineup.
Yeah, worked out 6-6.
No, it didn't.
Oh, no, yeah, who missed?
Lipsky bombed it at the end.
Yeah, that's what it was. The last hole missed the 2-footer.
But essentially, this is like who are the most popular plays going to be? Who do we deem as the safest plays? Can we jam them all into one lineup? And I think it starts with Xander, Fitzpatrick, Sungjae. Those three, right?
Xander, Fitzpatrick, Sungjae, we need for sure.
Xander, Fitzpatrick, Sungjae. Who goes in next, Ben?
I think I think that Fleetwood still is going to be a name that a lot of people are going to look to just because of his, some US Open history, and he's playing pretty well.
I think that Mito is the more popular play of that bunch.
I'm with Ben. We got 2-on-1 here because it's the US
Okay.
Open history. That's the difference. And again, people will talk themselves in and out of Mito because of he's continued since the PGA playing pretty well, but there's going to be love for Fleetwood, trust me. I think Kenny actually picks Fleetwood as the last guy, back to the earlier thing we talked about. So what does that leave us? And then we can see if we might have $100 left, or you can make that
We
change
have
anyway.
$8,300 left for the next two guys.
Okay. So now
It
what
seems
do
like we should have
people
like
do?
6,800 left.
I know. And that's why this is going to be such a common type lineup.
Yeah, it really is.
Max Homa goes in this lineup, and that leaves us with 8,500, which leads you to Daniel Berger.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's that, or it's Lowry and a $7,600 guy like Keegan Bradley at 7,500.
Yep.
Yeah, you could do. Does that actually work out if you dropped from?
Oh yeah. Look at this, Pat. So you go.
If you go from Fleetwood to Riley. No, it still doesn't.
No.
work out.
What you just had. So you had the original lineup up. If you go to, if your last two guys instead of Homa and Berger were Keegan Bradley and Lowry, you have the $100 to decide on Fleetwood versus Mito.
All right, so you have Lowry, you have Keegan,
Yep. Sungjae,
and you have
Fitz,
78.
X,
Yeah, you have Mito
or Fleetwood.
or Fleetwood.
Yeah, that's
You can.
Since I'm playing
Yeah.
this lineup, I'm going to put Mito in there because I prefer Mito over Fleetwood.
1v2. There you go.
And you have to know that this uses all your salary cap, which you got to do. As Tim Andercuss once told me, you don't get to take the money with you. You might as well use it.
This one you might as well give to charity because it's negative EV going in with what you put in.
No, I don't think anyone else is going to even come close to following around this lineup.
It's a good cash game lineup, though. I like this for cash. Like, it's solid.
I like this too. You can also, not that I would do this because I'm not playing this guy, but you can drop Fleetwood or Mito to Davis Riley, and you can bump Lowry to Spieth. That's another popular build.
Well, let's try to figure this out as well. So if we think that this is going to be close to the most popular build this week, how do you pivot off of these 6 guys, maybe off these 3 guys, and just make it a little bit different? Then maybe it does become an all right lineup. Like, can you go, instead of Xander, use Spieth? I don't know how much that's going to save. Or instead of Xander, use either Morikawa or Zalatoris.
Yeah, I'll say it like I always say. We talked on Strategy Show, bring up another point from there, but it's not who you play, it's how you play them. All this lineup tells me, and every variation we did of it, is that the mid 7K range to upper 7K range is getting pounded. So build your lineups without using any guys in that range. And you can still get away with a Lowry in there or an X in there. Just make sure you're skipping that. So that means you're going from a $7,600, $7,700 guy to one of those Norins or Harmons or guys we talked about, and then getting all that money to go up at another spot to add in Decky over Fitz, right? You drop in this example, you drop Sungjae to Harmon, you move Fitz up to Decky. It doesn't mean it's right. I'm just saying that math works, and it's definitely a completely unique build. And pick your 7K guy, pick your $6,900 guy. It wasn't really who we played, it's how we played it, and you end up moving off 2 chalk pieces at the same time.
I like it. Pat Mayo Experience will be back on Monday morning with Jeff Feinberg and Tim Undercust with the bets and most cursed players of the week. Tuesday, Rick Gaiman and myself will be going player by player. He's live on the scene at the Country Club, so we're going to get some insights on the course from there as well. Then Tambo and I will be back noon Eastern time on Mayo Media Network's YouTube page and the podcast feed after the fact, taking your questions live and going through the final ownership, the weather, all of the up-to-date information that you need to know. So please subscribe to Mayo Media Network and go tell some friends. And I told you about the giveaways, rate and review the podcast, share the show around, doing all that stuff will gain you entries into the cash giveaway. And then Cut Sweats on Friday night. Ben Rasa, what is going on over at Awesemo.com this week?
Yeah, so obviously a really fun week in the golf world over there. And, one of the themes of this show that we all talked about was we got to get this information up to date. So all our tools, the ownership projections and everything, we'll have plenty of content. Awesemo.com/join if you want to sign up even just for the week. We would love to have you as part of that community.
FantasyNational.com/Mayo gets you 20% off. What gets you some discounts at RunPureSports.com, Tambo?
Yeah. Head on over to RunPureSports.com. Promo code this time is RPSHeater25. Always, you said it last time, Big T's always on heater. Won another 150, 60K last night in a live final seat in baseball. All sports, one price. Got a lot going on for this week with that. And then, of course, Twitter. Follow me there at ToeTagAndTambo. I'm giving away 6 $100 Millie Maker tickets for this week. The winners are chosen, so you can't win that. But I was willing to give away up to 10, and I will be giving away more for the Open. So I would follow me there. My thread comes out every Wednesday, Tambo's Tidbits. Retweet it out for me. It gets you in the draws. So that's what we're doing for this week.
Yeah, you can check out Tambo's Tidbits and the link to that if you need to find it in the Mayo Media newsletter. That's free to join down in the description, as is. It's not free to play in the Listeners League. It's $15 to play in the Listeners League, but there's no rank, thus making it the best tournament on DraftKings. So let's fill that up, and maybe we'll get to $100,000 of guaranteed money at the final Open Championship. I remember you mentioned this before the show. 2 things. Did you play John this week? Because he's playing well.
Yeah.
You did?
Played a little bit of
And
it.
did you play Cam Percy, Raza?
Yeah.
Those guys, they both made the cut. All the losers I tried to play missed the cut.
I played Schwab. Talk about having a problem. That guy, he was good at one point.
I got the same problem, Ben, so we're in the same boat there.
You mentioned about the US Open and kind of talking yourself into it is what's your favorite major? I told you my favorite major is the Open Championship. Your favorite major is what? The Masters?
I honestly don't know. I said that was the starting question. The Masters is just too cliche though, and I'm always a little bit of a contrarian. I think it's either the Open for the prime time, the courses, the look, everything you and I talked about. You made those points, but I just don't understand why. I always fall into it, and I get shit on all the time because I'm not a big hockey fan, even though I'm Canadian. But the US Open is every time I get there, it's like my favorite major of the year. I don't know why. It's just great course. I looked at this course; it looks incredible. I cannot wait to watch, and I'm just excited about it for the DFS aspect as well. A little bit tougher track.
Yeah, I did the flyover for each of the holes in the research show, which you can check out on Mayo Media Network, Ben. Do you have a favorite major?
Oh, definitely the Open. No doubt about it.
Yeah, I always lean that way, too. There is something about the U.S. Open, though, that it's not only very watchable, it's very gripping because it feels like it's the most nail biting one. Because like I remember when I had Wolf versus Bryson in that 1v1 when Wolf went in with the lead. It was like, Bryson's probably going to win this, but like, just like, okay, he hit it into the rough. Can he get it onto the green? If he doesn't get it on the green, it's like, how close can he put this to the hole? It's like, will he make this 5-footer? Like, it just, every shot is so tense at the US Open. It really elevates it above the others, I feel like.
Also, that everything you said, but also I think the fact of just, it's like you almost know you're getting a good finish before you go in. It's so hard. It requires so much skill over 4 days that there's the very rare chance. You could see a first-time winner, but first-time winner, we're talking about like a Hovland or a Niem of a major, I'm saying. Cam Young. Like, that's what I'm saying. You could see something crazy like that, but you almost know you're getting storylines, good stuff going in, and always a good finish. If we get that playoff you talked about earlier, it just even adds to it, especially if we have one at the PGA Championship.
Were you glad? Some people are really mad, Ben, that they changed the U.S. Open playoff from 18 holes the next day to the 2-hole aggregate. I'm good with the 2-hole aggregate. Like, it's fine for me.
Yeah, what 18 holes? That's just stupid. I mean, I remember the Tiger one, but yeah, no, I am not for that at all.
Well, people might have liked it still more. We did get deprived. Don't forget Chambers Bay 3-putt from DJ. DJ versus Spieth at that time. We're going to be coming back out on Monday on that course, as tough as it was. Oh, man. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. There's so many good U.S. Open storylines that always come from it. It's not like the Open, which I love, but you can have like Henrik Stenson and Phil just run away from the field. It's not that exciting. It was a one-on-one the rest of the week, you know?
I do feel like there are circumstances, and I've only really remember this from Congo when Rory just beat, and Keimer at Pinehurst. They just beat the crap out of everybody.
Yeah.
And it was not close from Thursday on. It's like they were playing some easy course and everyone else was playing the hardest course in history. It was non-competitive. You rarely see that at the US Open. I do feel like you get those Open Championships, though, where there's 3 or 4 guys and just somehow they end up way ahead of everyone, and it's only those 4 guys all week. And it makes it like,
It's not as good, yeah, because you can have weather waves there too, which we'll talk about when we get to our next major doing this. But you get the weather wave there. You have already a smaller group. They pull away from it in that wave. They pull, and then only 5 of them play well and pull away. It becomes like a 4 or 5 man show the whole weekend.
Ben, how contrarian would you have to be to think that the PGA Championship is your favorite major?
Yeah, I was almost going to say that, but I didn't want you to like clip it and people don't understand sarcasm out there. So that's just not the answer.
Oh, we can see the tweet will be out later from Tim. There's only one guy that would ever put that as
not enough history. Like he hates the Masters because it doesn't have enough history.
All right. Okay. Well, what is his? The Open?
It's the Open.
Yeah. Okay.
Open and US Open are very like 1A, 1B for him.
The Open. They got the yellow scoreboards. You can't beat that.
The yellow scoreboards are immaculate.
Primetime golf is immaculate. I love just being up and like saving, like you're waiting for that at the end of the day, staying up.
Well, we both have little kids, so once I wake up, it's like, hey, I'm up at 5 anyway. Hey, there's live golf on with players whose names I can pronounce. This is great.
Yeah, I love it.
All in on that. Anyway, I hope you were all in on the Pat Mayo Experience DraftKings Pick Show. I told you the schedule. I told you the giveaways. Hit the description. All of that information is going to be down there, plus some key bonuses as well. If you want to get in on the action, highly recommend that you check all of that out. Thank you all for watching. Smash the like on the way out, and I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience. Experience.